Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. Dear Holy Spirit, welcome into this conversation. And today we want to seek beauty and a new perspective. And so with that said, David, welcome into the conversation.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Yes.
Now, Dave, we've known each other for several years. Many moons ago, we met at a little place in Copley called the Barnstone Studios. And I'm curious, let's explore that a little bit. What was your experience there, and how has it influenced you as an artist today?
Well, thanks for asking, because it is really the foundation of so much of what I do now. That experience of studying with Myron Barnstone at the Barnstone Studios opened my eyes, gave me new vision, a new way of seeing the world through design. It equipped me with a whole new set of skills in my drawing, in color, how to design with both line, but also how to use color and value to really strengthen my work further. And also it led me to teaching art history with my students at the high school. And I use some of those ideas around design to help students to really become more visually literate, to look at works and be able to engage with them on a more sustained basis rather than the typical 5 or 10 second glance. So I get kids to describe the hidden geometry, so to say, that is undergirding works through the centuries. Also, Myron Barnstone helped me to see how prior artists influence later artists. What were the things they carried from one artist to the next? And so that everything is derivative, in a sense, with art. We're influenced by work from the past, ideas from the past. And so I always remind my students when I teach them that I'm not original at all. Everything I'm doing is in some way influenced or shaped by another artist prior to me, or the ideas of artists that I look to actively. So that's just a very quick overview of this wonderful community that I got to know through the Barnstone School and the ideas that came with that.
Beautiful, man. You know, you said something I've never heard an artist say before, outside of myself, and that is that you don't do anything original.
Yeah.
I always told people when I was younger, and they would get mad at me. I would say, I don't create any. Like, it's already created. Like, I just listen.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of curious, like, now you were saying, meaning in terms like other artists have already done these things or built these systems. Like, explain that a little bit more about you not originating anything.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, I may be somewhat original in my subject matter and how I treat my subject matter. For example, I went down to the Delaware River. I saw this beautiful scene of a bridge over the canal. And the bridge is a red structure. I love the contrast with the green. But then when I went to work on it in my studio, I'm looking at Cezanne for his parallels, how he structures trees, and the parallel lines that undergird his work. And I want to absorb that system. I want to look at Van Gogh's marks and strokes in his paint and say, okay, I want to take those ideas right into this scene that I have found personally meaningful. It's my choice. And yet I'm drawing upon this toolbox of artists that precede me and that have inspired me and get me all excited to do this new piece, this new painting, using those tools.
So
And
you would say that our choices are unique and our choices are ours,
yeah,
but the the foundation of those choices are not.
exactly. Yes. I picked that landscape because I saw dramatic perspective lines, which I looked to in Van Gogh. So in a way, I'm choosing things also because I know other artists have taken those very scenes and reworked them. And so even the choices that inspire me mostly, but also I see potential for design and on canvas are informed by past artists.
That's awesome, man. So then, how would you like to a student explain what design is?
Okay. So yeah, what is design? That's a wonderful word to use. What does it really mean? Yeah, it means making a lot of decisions. It means work when you're creating. It's not like I'm working with a stroke of genius when I paint. Design is like, okay, the decisions I have to make with what is going to be the darkest dark and the lightest light in this work. What's going to be the maximum contrast between a light and dark element that's going to draw the eye.
Mm-hmm.
How do I structure this building to make it look like it recedes in space? How do I give volume and three dimensionality to objects? What are the techniques and tools that I've learned to make that happen?
Mm-hmm.
My decisions around color. Well, I need to use a color wheel, and I'm going to put my colors on a color wheel because I know that works best for me. Otherwise, I'll tend to be all over the place with colors and not have as unified or harmonious a painting.
Mm.
So design are those structures that give voice to my unique vision.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. I love that.
Thank
Um, so what are you currently working on right now?
I've been working on a cubist treatment of the human form.
Mm-hmm.
Just finished three paintings. Fortunately, two of them I sold pretty quickly, and
Nice.
I basically take what I learned from Myron. I'll even show these lines in the background, these diagonals, and use them as part of the background, but not to interfere with the human form, but
Mm-hmm.
break the form into planes and allow those intersecting or those diagonal lines in the background to even cut into the figure, to actually let the edges of those lines inform the changes of shadow in the form or in the body, where the line of the outer leg meets up
Mm-hmm.
with the diagonal from the top of the composition, or rather from the rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
I do sort of what I call a faux golden section rectangle, where I let these lines show, but then how they intersect and coincide with the figure, both internally within the figure and also the edges of the figure. So
Nice.
that's what I've been doing lately. It's just, yeah, taking a different approach to the figure. And at the same time, I love to go back to landscapes, just traditional landscapes. I'm a sucker for the sentimental landscapes, but I do try to bring some of those very carefully in those lines for the golden section.
So what is it about the landscapes that draws you in?
Certainly the moment of light, there's that moment where, oh yeah, I can see now. Like there's something within that landscape that's lit in just a way that I want to capture that, because I know it's going to change in even 5 minutes or a few seconds if the clouds come by.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's also thinking more like even when I do photography, I'm looking at landscape as an artist. What is it I want to isolate? What's going to draw my eye most?
Mm-hmm.
Because in a photograph, of course, you can see a lot of different elements that may draw the eye. But now I have to choose those moments when there's something when actually the experience is simplified. I have all these trees and houses. Okay, what is it we're going to focus on today?
Mm.
So yeah, so it is that moment we talk about sometimes. I have another teacher who worked with Myron.
Mm.
Her name is Doc Bunner. I have to thank her so much for her ideas, and she
Oh
talks
yeah,
about that.
done. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's outstanding, and she has just given me added ideas for my painting, and it's become in a sense, a mentor. I only get to see her in the summer when I'm off from school to study with her. But boy, I find I have grown with her and she's helped me to really amplify my color more, and also to look for those lit up moments, and
Mm.
what light do we want to emphasize, and what other information in the work do we want to tone down, so that lit section of the painting will really resonate.
Mm. That's beautiful, man. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. And how long have you been working with Dot?
Off and on for 5 years. But
Oh,
as
nice.
I say, it's usually about 4 or 5 sessions in the summer. I will go sometimes six. Boy, if I could, if she could be around when I'm retired, I'd love to stay with her full time. Because yeah, I would say in this whole region here, she's one of those artists that you really want to get to know and see her work as well as study with her.
Yeah.
And she's carried along some of the Myron Barnstone tradition, especially when it comes to the design
Hmm.
and in terms of your composition and also to the use of color. She just is really a wealth of insight.
Yeah, I remember her work, uh, and her color was incredible. I
Yeah.
think she really understood that whole Fletcher thing, and
Yes, exactly.
yeah,
Just helped me to apply that more than anyone else. Yeah.
yeah. That's really cool, man. That's really cool. So now you're working on figures, but you really enjoy. Um, would you say most of your work then is landscape?
Yeah, it's been much more landscape than anything else. Exactly. The figures is a more of a recent development.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I look to for figure work. I'm looking at like Diego Rivera's early Cubist era for his
Mm-hmm.
paintings. I really am excited by his work, and yeah, I'm also looking at yeah, just basically the Cubists to see how they treat the human form.
Nice. Because I saw one of your paintings, and you could really see the geometry. It was
Mhm.
kind of cool. It was kind of like wired into the figure.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to one of your shows a few years back, and I remember seeing the landscapes that you had. And it was very similar in that way, where the geometry was wired into
Yeah.
uh, into the image. Um, and so it was kind of cool to look at your work the other day, and to see how it's still there, but it's evolved and become more sensitive,
Uh-huh.
with that. And so, and then I was looking at the figures, and I was like, oh man, this is cool.
Uh-huh. Well,
uh,
thank you. I like that image you gave of wired into it because I'm working at it. How do I integrate those lines well within the form, and that they don't become sort of yeah, intrusive or flatten the form. That's the challenge I have. The growth.
yeah, yeah, because you got to figure out like which one sings louder
Yeah.
and at what point, and so you're composing like a maestro with an orchestra, and
Hmm.
it's like at this point you want the strings to go, and at this one you want the bass to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
um and so yeah. So what other experiences did you have when you were younger that led you on to this path of artistry?
Oh wow! As a child, I loved to draw, and I remember my dad made a blackboard for me. I had at that time I was living in the Republic of Guyana, South America, so I had no television to watch, and this is back in the '60s. So all my free time, was spent in drawing on this blackboard, erase and then draw some more scenes, and my whole inner world I could put out on that little blackboard. It was maybe about 3 feet long and maybe 2 feet wide.
That's
But,
awesome.
but it's my world, yeah, that I could create. And the rare moments I could go see a movie, because again, all we had was movie theaters back then. Uh, I would then, if I saw Ben Hur, the movie, of course, I was so impressed with that. I represent those scenes from the movie, the most
Yeah.
vivid scenes, right on the blackboard. So, and I was very fortunate. I had parents who supported that, who let me explore that. And I was a very introverted kid, so I would just spend hours at the blackboard doing this.
That's
And,
so cool, dude.
yeah, exactly. So,
Very
yeah,
nice.
a little piece of chalk, and that's all I needed.
I'll tell you, I love that blackboard story. When my daughter was young, we put up a blackboard, and
Mhm.
um, and so I have these photos of her at the blackboard, drawing, and she was maybe 3, 4 years old, and and so I draw like two grids, and then I
Yeah.
plot like a little dog or something in one grid, and then I would say, okay, now all you want to do is like go from that point to that point, and she would be doing it, and she had these like dogs, or whatever, and
Yeah.
cats, and so it was pretty cool, and
Great.
but that blackboard uh, was really really powerful for her to have that creative space, and so
Yes.
Um, it kind of touched my heart when you said that your dad did that for you too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Like,
it's so valuable, so important for my development. Yeah.
it's nice. Do you let your kids at school draw on the blackboard?
Once in a while I do actually. I'll actually have them narrate a story
Uh-huh.
because I teach actually Spanish is what I teach. So
Oh, okay.
if I'm wanting them to use the grammar and the vocabulary from a unit, they put it up on the blackboard or on posters, and I say, and you ought to also add an illustration because
Mm.
that'll keep the student attention, and they can be really funny. These drawings, I mean, they can be so primitive, but they're funny, and so kids laugh at them. And one of the simplest low tech ways I have them narrate a story or a story fragment is to use a transparency, and they get a
Mm-hmm.
marker, and then they work with their partner, and they put up on the transparency, and we flash it up on a screen. It's old technology, but it works, and they can actually see hand drawn stuff.
That's cool.
So and it goes with the story that illustrates the story.
Mm-hmm.
And they're amused at each other's work. Here are 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds laughing at each other's very crude drawings, but hey, they're engaged. They're talking about it, and they're presenting a narrative that goes with those pictures.
That's funny. That's cool, man. That's
Yeah,
cool. So that's all right. You do speak Spanish,
yeah.
and you teach it. Now, did you learn that when you were in South America? I'm assuming.
Well, yeah. Actually, it was an English-speaking colony, but I
Mm-hmm.
was exposed to different languages and accents. And I was raised with a West Indian accent. I spoke with a West Indian accent, but when I took it in high
What's that
school,
sound like?
oh, I can't even imitate. I've lost it totally, and I would butcher it now if I tried. But your syllables are emphasized, and your th sounds. For example, the number three, I would say tree as a kid.
I
Uh,
think you just went back into it when you said
I
that.
did a
Butcher.
little bit, yeah. It's the
Butchered.
hint of it, yeah,
I
yeah.
butchered.
But it's a way of it's a way of speaking that's very colorful, and sometimes you repeat words like that's so fine. You might want to emphasize very fine by saying it's fine, fine.
Oh, that's
Double the
cool. That's
words.
fine, fine.
Yeah,
Nice. I like
that's
that.
part of the Creole speak you'll hear in some countries, and in Jamaica too. They do that. But yeah, so it was. So yeah, but of course, when I moved to the United States, I was 10. I moved to
Mm.
York, Pennsylvania, which was not exactly the most embracing of diversity. So I quickly learned to lose that accent and be like American kid.
Camouflage.
Yeah, exactly. So, but my mind was always still shaped by my upbringing there, and I still have vivid memories.
Hmm.
But my Spanish I learned in college. I had terrible Spanish classes in high school, but somehow I still was interested, even with the terrible teaching. But college gave me wonderful courses, and then I drove with a good friend down to Honduras, Central America, when I just turned 19. And I
Hmm.
had a month break from school, and did some volunteer work after driving 2 weeks. And you know how road trips can be very eye opening and introduce you to a whole new world.
Mm-hmm.
And so this road trip was my sort of consciousness raising as we traveled through Mexico and into Guatemala, and finally arrived in Honduras, and meeting people along the way. And it was an amazing experience.
That's
So
cool.
and then working down there, and then I went back in subsequent years to do teaching or volunteer work with the Moravian Church,
Mm-hmm.
and in Honduras and Nicaragua. And then in recent years, I've gone with delegations of youth to Cuba and served as translator for them. But all these years, I've also been teaching
That's neat,
Spanish.
man. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, there's
That's
always a
good.
job, by the way, when you teach Spanish. There's a lot of interest in learning.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
um, gotta communicate. So, um, that's really, really cool. So now, because of your speaking Spanish, do you find yourself leaning uh, into Spanish artists, or has that not affected you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I love the muralists, for example, Rivera, abstract work like by Rufino Tamayo from Mexico. I look to Mexico for inspiration.
Mm.
Uh, it's not directly reflected in my work. Well, actually, no. Diego Rivera's early Cubist era, yes, definitely. I draw upon his ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and of course Picasso. He's the great one. But I look to other abstract works like Piet Mondrian, and how
Mm-hmm.
he dissected trees into
Mm.
arcs and curves, arcs and straight lines, and So, but yeah, for subject matter, I do love looking at Latin American artists. You know, Wilfredo Lam from Cuba has some amazing natural scenery that he reduces again to more geometric form.
Hmm.
So I'm most excited exactly when I look at that. I collected a little bit of Cuban art that I brought from Cuba back that I really enjoy.
Oh, nice. So you really like looking at work where people are not necessarily um, trying to be photorealistic or anything, but really just trying to push that geometry.
Yeah.
And and now, why does that intrigue you so much?
Yeah, there's something with geometry that gives a form and a structure. I know I struggled in the past with drawing, with making form, and
Mm-hmm.
so I needed that geometry to give greater shape and substance to what I was trying to draw.
Mm.
So I think geometry helps me to become more disciplined in what I try to represent. Um, and so yeah, that's one part of it. It helps also the eye to experience the work more fully. I think, like there's something about the elegance of Paul Cézanne's landscapes, where there's only three major directions. If you were
Mm.
to draw an invisible line on top of his brushstrokes, there's only about three major directions: vertical, diagonal, and then maybe in one other direction, opposite diagonal. And there's in simplicity there is an elegance and a complexity, which seems
Yes.
contradictory. But yet the eye needs directions. It needs help to look at a painting, and so the artist's job is to help the eye to have that pleasing experience. And part of
Mm-hmm.
that is through a geometric plan.
That's neat. That's neat. I think when we look at geometry, um, it triggers in us a connection to life
Yes,
because the unique thing about it is we never invented it. We only discovered it,
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Our eyes have helped us to see and make order out of what we see through geometry.
Have you ever seen those videos where the guy puts like a black paper and he puts salt on the paper and then he changes the sound frequency?
Uh huh.
And what happens is when he does the sound frequency, it vibrates the paper and it takes the salt and creates a geometric pattern.
I
And
didn't
every
know that.
time he shifts the frequency, it changes and it just keeps changing the geometry.
I need to look at that. That's intriguing. I had no idea, but
Oh,
that's
yeah.
it's inherent in nature, right?
It's, yeah. And so that's what I mean. Like, we didn't make it.
It's
We
there.
just, it's, yeah. And with humans here or not, it still existed.
You know, I
And
remember back to my Barnstone classes where Myron talked about, you know, that geometry, that sacred geometry is apprehending the mind of God, the design,
yes, yeah,
inherent in nature, um, gives us access to something transcendent. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and as you said, that's evident even in sound and its impact.
It's, yeah. And visually seen through sound. Like, it's
Ah,
like, I'm going to send that video to you today.
yeah,
It'll blow your mind. And you're just like, what?
yeah,
So
yeah,
now the question then is if you can make sound and it
yeah,
converts into image,
yes,
is there a way to do the other way around? Can you have images that then convert into sound? So for example, like when we read a book, like you're reading, but you hear it in your head,
yeah,
right? So it's like
yeah.
you're hearing with your eyes. It's not a sound wave, but you hear this sound in you, right? So, is there a way to be trained and become sensitive to the point that when you look at an image, you actually hear something?
Wow, I've never tried that, you know? I mean, I know that music itself, good music is built on a mathematical structures, excuse me. But actually, to take the two senses together and have them work in partnership, I never conceptualized it. That's an intriguing idea.
Indeed. Hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I think the geometry. I think that's why these guys are pushing that because it really, it's like, okay, let's get past the surface, the cosmetic aspect of this thing, and really see what the essence of this thing is. And
Yeah.
I think Michelangelo said that. He said the very, he said design is the very essence of painting, sculpture, and architecture.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
like, yeah.
Yep. Yep. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, where is it that you're trying to push to next? Like, what is it that you want to? see yourself, or what ideas are you trying to push and
Yeah,
explore?
what new frontiers do I want to explore? Yeah. Oh boy, I like to become larger on my canvas and really go into
Mm,
bold, large landscapes. So I want to keep going with the figure as well and see
hmm
where that leads. But to take now larger larger canvases, like I love going to a nearby apple orchard, and I just took a series of pictures
mm,
of the orchard in bloom. And of course, Van Gogh took apple trees in blossom and made them so beautifully, so elegant, and of course, and accentuates the geometry of those trees, the angle and curve. Combination is just so great, and I'd like to explore that with the local scene here. So I'm waiting now to go back and paint outdoors with the trees. I like to try to do some plein air painting just to capture the moment.
hmm
Uh, though I have to work with additional photographs that I've taken and use a screen to really get to my, because I'm such a slow painter. uh, yeah, that's my new frontier. I think is to really do more with nature, and in this case, the apple orchard nearby.
That sounds beautiful. I can feel in that, and when you said that, a masterpiece in the making.
Uh,
Now that means
yeah,
that there's a big if on there, right? You gotta pull that thing out,
that's right. That's
but
right.
it's there. I can you can
Yeah,
almost see it looking back at you like a forest with eyes
yeah,
looking back at you. Um, and I think the scale, um, is part of that. When I mean you say big, are you like what do you mean by big?
okay. Good. Yeah, good question. Maybe not huge, but like 24 by 30, getting larger even to 30 by 40-inch canvases. So they're larger than what I've been doing. I used to do larger canvases when I was much younger, and I'd like to return to that and have a looser brushstroke as a result as well. When I get
Hmm.
that and who knows if I can even
I
do
want to encourage you, man. Go bigger. Go two,
yeah,
three
even
times that
bigger.
size. To be quite honest,
Yeah,
like do something like 6 feet long or something.
but that's what would be great is to do that and so yeah, I'm timid, and so that would force me to break out of that timidity and just really yeah, exactly, go strong and bold. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you. Yeah,
Because
for the
because with
encouragement.
that design, that you embed in there.
Yes.
If you're looking at a little 9 by 12, right, or even something that's 24 by 36,
Yeah.
your eye moves only in that distance, right? And
Yeah.
so it's contained within it. Um, but when it has to move, that arc, let's say,
Yeah.
moves, in a let's say a foot distance, and it has to move in that arc. That's an experience.
Yeah.
But when that thing has to move 4 feet and that moves the eye, it's like amplifying that experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so um it's like it's yeah, amplifying and over and exaggerating that experience. And I think when somebody walks in and feels that geometry and their eye
Mhm.
has to move through it in these big sweeps,
Yeah.
um it will become incredibly overwhelming in a beautiful way,
Yes.
and then when you're controlling that palette, because a lot of times you think big and bold, you think bright colors and lots of stuff, and then you're
Uh-huh.
overwhelmed with it.
Yes.
And mhm.
Right. Keep going. I mean, you're right because yeah, you want to be bold, but you got to control, and you got to have your cools and your neutrals as well to make the bright stand out. But you got to exactly make
Yeah,
a lot of decisions.
I always say, and it's a derivative from something Myron used to say, which is, you go in a gallery, you see this big bold painting,
Uh,
and you're overwhelmed by it, right? You're in awestruck because you feel something,
yeah.
and you're like, oh my god, I feel something, right? And then you take it home and you hang it up, and you're so happy, and then you ultimately come to the conclusion that the damn thing never shuts up because
Oh,
it's just
okay.
always screaming at you,
Oh,
right?
screaming. Yeah. Uh huh. Yeah.
So that vibration, that frequency that it broadcasts, whatever it is that you design, or even if you don't design, your artwork is communicating something. And just by the nature of making one mark on a surface,
Yeah.
or within a rectangle, it vibrates in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if this thing is bold and yelling loud, and it captures that person's attention, but now the thing just is constantly bold and loud, and yeah, and you come home and you're tired or whatever, and you got to deal
Huh.
with that nonsense. So to have something big, like what you would do, and it's not even the content in terms of the apple trees,
Yeah.
but the design within the apple trees, um, that could be. And then when you're dealing with that palette and you're controlling those colors,
Hmm.
and you come home and on a good day or a bad day, and that thing is waiting for you like a happy dog,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like, or like a
Yeah.
cat, let's say, like it just kind of rubs your leg, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and you feel its love, but it's a gentle love. It's not
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
ah,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
In fact,
know.
we have four cats, and we love how they approach us. Each in their own calm and quiet way. Yeah. Yeah. It's
So that
great.
would be interesting to it, if I was working with you. That would be what you just said right there. Would be
Yeah.
the essence of that apple orchard painting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, I would have you sit down and write out maybe one or two sentences about the
Yeah.
essence and personality of each of those cats.
Yeah.
And then those would be sections of the grove. And it would
Okay.
really be about like how the cats, and maybe the trees might be the legs of people. And the way
Yeah.
your eye moves through there
Uh-huh.
is how the cat deals with each, right? So when you look at that, the way your eye moves through it reminds you of maybe the relationship you have with your cat, or maybe a brother or whatever, right? It just um so that would be very interesting to
Great,
see if you
great
can impose
metaphor.
that.
Yeah, because it'd be great for me to like to think it through and journal some of the ideas you just mentioned in preparation for the painting. Because I've never done that. I just sort of just attack it with the composition and the sketches, but to reflect in some way on what do I want to accomplish in this painting, and how do I want to what kind of what do I want to reflect in this is an important step too.
Yeah, because you were saying earlier about uh capturing the light, knowing where the dominant contrasts are and those
Huh?
things. But what I wasn't hearing was why.
Yeah, why
You know,
exactly? Yeah,
it was knowing how to do it, but why? Why
why
would
do
the
I want to
light
do
be
that?
there? Yeah.
Exactly, and that's I think that's a very important question of why do I do these landscapes? And I think for me it's because the light can take on such a magical quality, and I have this breathtaking moment almost when I look at the most ordinary things around me here in Lehigh Valley.
Mm.
There's that light moment that it's sort of like Charles Birchfield. He put these halos around trees. It's almost
Mm.
like there's this sacred moment. There's this moment of the holy or God or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that we see in those moments of light. And so that's what I'm trying to capture too. Is that yeah, feeling of sacredness, perhaps, or transcendence in that moment.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
and so, yeah, like I'm looking at with these sort of eyes of seeing magic that I want to convey. I think in the painting or capture in the painting on that one moment. Um, so, yeah,
Yeah, that's beautiful. I
like,
think, and I can tell you have a sensitive soul, and so when you put your mind into that space,
uh-huh,
I think it's going to become very easy for you to hear and see. And then what's beautiful is once you capture that, then all the design tools fall right into place on what you're communicating and why
yeah,
you're communicating, and like and all those systems help carry you from the beginning to the end.
yeah, yeah.
Once you know that why up front, right?
And
What is it
that why has to keep driving my creating too. Yeah,
exactly?
I have a mission in a sense to accomplish here
Yep.
for me and for the world out there, whatever that will be. Yeah, but first and foremost for me, what is it I have within me that I need to bring out?
Yep. And then you use the design to help guide
Yes,
that experience for that end viewer, right? So what is it?
keeping. Yeah.
Because that's what communication is. If I have a thought, you have
Uh-huh.
no idea what that thought is.
Uh-huh.
But then if I use the tools, aka a language,
Yeah.
and I embed that spirit, that thought, that in that construct of what we call that language, and I cast it out, and then
Uh-huh.
somebody else comes and receives that word,
Yeah.
And they have the same system with inside that they can then decode those words, and then that
Yeah.
idea is unlocked in them. And now we've communicated.
Yeah.
Or we shared, I should say, an idea. Now, if you put an idea and enclose it in a capsule and you send it back in that capsule called language, and
Uh-huh.
it comes in me and dissolves, and now it's within me. Now we're communicating back and forth. And
Yeah.
it's a very weird thing how, you know, as humans, we're strangely how much we're separated, even though you could sit there and be holding someone's hand, and the
Yeah.
truth is you're billions of miles away from each other.
Uh-huh.
And
That's right.
but communication allows us to be
To enter. That's right.
into each other. Yeah.
And we're made better for it. But yes, how do I want to get someone else to share and participate in this sort of sacred moment I had in this experience of the landscape? Well, the design will help me hopefully to access that person's interior life.
Get rid of the hopeful.
Yeah, just
Either
strive.
does or doesn't.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It is exactly. So yeah, just like oration, great orators can take that language, but construct it in a way, just like Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech.
Yep.
He's taking these ideas within him, but he gave such a structure. He used rhetoric structure to make it so powerful.
There's a great video a woman did where she broke down his speech and a couple other speeches.
Yeah.
And into like rhythms and stuff.
Yes.
And she found what it was that works for these great speakers, right? And and there's like this pattern. It's almost like writing poetry.
Yeah.
And really what she was talking about was the design and the composition of his speech.
Yeah.
And you can use those same exact principles visually, having certain rhythms, like Harold Speed said, if you don't have a rhythm in your work, it does not breathe.
Right. And that's the other thing I had learned through Barnstone was not only do you have lines that set up composition, but you have to have arcs and curves and arabesques to have the eye dance across the painting.
Yeah.
As you said, that rhythm, those lilting moments. And that's to me, it's hard work. People say, you relax when you paint. Oh, no, it's work. I'm struggling. I'm sweating. I'm having doubts. I'm like, oh no. In fact, I'm glad to have artists who can point out things to me. Oh yeah, I got to work on this now. It's a lot of decisions, and so it can be a bit agonizing sometimes. So if you have a great drawing worked out, that helps a lot. But sometimes I'm in the middle of a painting. I'm still trying to figure out some problems I didn't figure out before, and so that becomes a little more agonizing.
Yep.
So anyway,
that's cool, man. That's cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing these apple trees, man.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted, man. I'll send the sketches as well, and I'll welcome your feedback. Let's just pause for a second. I did receive a call from the person I'm doing the Zoom with. Let me see if he might have canceled or what. So if I can just.
All right, guys. Well, we're back. So Dave, you've mentioned this Moravian. I think you work at the Moravian Academy, right? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay. And so being from Pennsylvania, I've heard of Moravians and the Moravian College. I think we went to a soccer game there once years ago. I believe actually Myron started his teaching there.
Yes.
Is that true?
I know he taught Lehigh, and I believe he did some work early on in his teaching career at Moravian College. Yes.
Yeah, I think that might have been the first place he taught before he actually opened the studios. So what is a Moravian? Do they still exist? I don't know. I know in Pennsylvania we have at least a long history of Quakers.
Yeah.
But I was never really sure what a Moravian was. So
yes.
What is it?
Yeah, the Moravian Church is very much alive and well, Protestant denomination, and it actually is very strong and growing in Africa, where it was in a mission field at one time, and now has its own life of its own independently. And its roots go back to what we call the Czech Republic today, but the region of Moravia. And there was
Interesting.
a Reformation movement um, prior to Martin Luther. So it goes back
Really?
almost 100 years before Martin Luther.
What?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what was so by saying a Reformation, they were pulling away from the Catholicism?
It was with the Moravians trace their roots back to John Huss, who actually was a Catholic priest and who wanted to remain Catholic priest, but protested the abuses of the church with the sale of indulgences. He advocated for the mass being in the language of the people, plus the preaching and the biblical readings in the language of the people, the vernacular, and that went against the authority of the time. Uh, and so there are a lot of parallels between his message and that of Martin Luther, who both, I think, wanted to reform the church and not create a separate movement.
Right.
Out of then John Huss came various movements, some more nationalistic than others, out of what was again that region of the Czech Republic of ideas that
Mm-hmm.
came. And the Moravians come out of a more pacifist offshoot from Huss
Mm.
called the Unitas Fratrum, or the Unity of the Brethren. And so they formed in 1457 around the ideas of Huss, and then were persecuted for a number of years in the 1600s,
By
and
who?
by the Roman Catholic Church of the time, allied
Okay.
with the powers that be. So we're looking at the 1600s, from 1630 on, were scattered from the Czech Republic into various regions. And one of the people who gave sort of structure and form to their ideas was a fellow named John Amos Comenius, a bishop in the Moravian Church.
Say his name again.
Comenius, John
No,
Amos.
the whole
Comenius.
name.
Oh, John Amos Comenius.
That just
Yeah,
sounds funny.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And his ideas really take shape in the ideas of modern education that we take for granted. You know, the access of women to education. He advocated for that. Was one
mm,
of the pioneers of that. Also, illustration of textbooks, the use of field trips for learning, illustrations that are meaningful and key to education, and that education should be friendly with the brain's process. He called the schools the slaughterhouse of the mind
mm.
because of the way education was done so much more rote and beating ideas into kids' heads. So yeah, so he did a lot of inductive approaches to education as well.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And when was he around?
He was in the 1600s.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
and was part of the diaspora of the Moravian community, and so his ideas really influenced a lot of the church. And then this persecuted movement found sanctuary in 1720, a fragment of this persecuted group in the estate of Nicholas von Zinzendorf, a German.
Mm.
And so a lot of what we see in Moravian now is more shaped by the Germanic sort of evolution of the church. But its
Ah,
roots go
okay.
back to the Czech Republic. And that's the name Moravian. It comes from Moravia, the region of Moravia in what's now the Czech Republic.
That's an interesting thing. I've been obsessed lately with watching these videos called Israel, One for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And they're about these really 99% of the videos are about Jews who came through this experience and came to accepting Yeshua as the Messiah, like Jesus as the Messiah, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it's very fascinating to see how many of these Jews thought, oh, Jesus was a Jew, right? And like they never knew that when you read, like, say, New Testament, it was Jesus was a Jew. It was during Jewish culture. It was Jewish places. It was to Jewish people, written by Jewish people, right?
Uh-huh.
And they always thought, oh, Jesus was a Catholic. He must be Italian or something, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and so one of the things that I've been really thinking a lot about is how we label movements and things, but the people going through that are not labeling anything,
Yeah.
right? And so technically one could say there is no such thing as a Christianity. We're all just Jews, right? It's a continuation of that story.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Um,
It's a
and
continuation.
so
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I was getting from what you were saying, is like they never stopped viewing themselves as a Catholic. They just wanted to be a better Catholic, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
I never really thought of Luther that way as well, because obviously we think, oh,
You start
his
Lutheranism. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
like we call it Protestant,
Yeah,
right? Until I had a friend from Africa who pronounced it correctly, which is Protestant. I'm like,
yeah,
wait, he protested. He
that's right.
protested something. Oh,
That's
what?
right.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But even in art, we give these movements, we label these movements like, oh, he's a cubist, or he's this, or he's
Uh-huh.
that. And it was like, did those words even exist? Like,
That's right. Yes, impressionist was a insulting word. They didn't call themselves that originally, the impressionist painters, but it stayed with them, and then it became favorable.
it's kind of funny. Even the word Christian, like people are like, are you a Christian? I'm like, well, they're like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, because Christian was an insult, I think that people in
Uh-huh.
Antioch are like, oh, look at those Christians. And it wasn't like a positive word. It was,
Right, right, and it's also a word that's being contested today, as we see bad examples of it. Yeah,
exactly.
and in the original movement, I think it was called the Way, simply the people of the Way.
Yeah, the way, the people of the way. You
Yeah,
know,
way back in the early.
in Islam, they say something about like Abraham, because of his faith, he was considered one of the certain. And I was like, oh, I like that. I
Uh-huh.
want to be one of the certain.
Ah,
um,
interesting.
you know, but yeah, the people of the way. So that's interesting. I really appreciate you sharing about the Moravians. I didn't know, well, honestly, any of that, and that's very cool.
Yeah, the history is pretty fascinating. I would say, I mean, what we see here in Bethlehem, for example, amongst the Moravians, is it's much more accommodated to the surrounding culture and shaped by that than anything else. But if you look at the history, it is pretty. It can really inspire courage with the examples of its work overseas and the ideals behind mission and the very humanistic quality.
Mm,
I say Moravian because I like the humanism as well, the optimism about humans and human capacity, and its honoring of human creativity through music.
mm,
For example, the Bach Festival here. Bach music was first performed in the New World here in the United States, I believe, in the Moravian community. It was introduced in a colonial era when music was considered perhaps a luxury, and art
mm.
also, painting, was valued by the early Moravian community in the Lehigh Valley to be an expression of faith and to be a way of transmitting that faith to others.
Yeah.
So I think there was underlying all that was a view that humans have great potential. We're not just sinners or whatever, but that we have a great capacity, and that art and music reflect that divine spirit around us.
Indeed. It's funny. I think it was Bach who was known to be a believer, and I think on his compositions he would write. He would dedicate them to Christ and things.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I think he was the one who also revolutionized music by piano playing. By, I guess, before his time, or when he was trained, you would play the piano only with three fingers.
Yeah.
Revolutionize it by playing with all five.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I had no
It's
idea. Yeah,
like,
yeah,
like three. Like, why wouldn't you use the other two? They're or
yeah,
four.
yeah.
They're standing there, right? So in a weird way, I guess it kind of gave him a whole nother hand in a way.
Right.
About it.
Well, certainly amplify the possibilities, huh?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but sometimes it's just like, how many times in life, do you have 10 fingers, but you only restrict yourself to six?
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
know. I know.
interesting.
And just like with art, yeah, we're trying to expand our toolbox in so many ways, and so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So do you incorporate your I don't know if calling it a religious life is the right way of
Uh-huh.
calling it, but we'll just say that for the sake of the
Sure.
argument. Uh do you incorporate that into your artwork, or like what kind of place does your religion or your faith play with your artwork?
Yeah, that's something I have to work on too. Is just how do I want to express that more? Because I don't have overtly religious works. I
Hmm.
would say what I'm trying to express in nature and what I see hopefully carries some level of spirituality or conveys something deeper. But that's a journey I'm still taking a long
Hmm.
ways ahead. Uh, I mean, I did a abstraction of a crucifixion recently, where I really loosened up with abstracting the form, but also application of paint.
Mm.
Uh, so that's one where you could say, okay, oh, that's definitely crucifixion, even though it's non-representational. But yeah, it'd be great to explore, like Graham Sutherland, where he showed the crucifixion in much more geometric and abstracted ways. How could I take more traditional ideas in faith, but then take them into a different level of expression? So that's a whole nother dimension that I look forward to doing in retirement, because the reality for me as a painter is I get moving in the summer, get ideas going, and then boom, I have to stop because school starts, and
Yeah.
it gets very busy in September and October. And so I lose that momentum. And so I can try to recapture that momentum periodically throughout the school year when I have breaks. And so I like to, take, artists really need a time and exploration and uninterrupted time to do that. And that's a big challenge.
Yeah.
But those are all goals I have. Those are things I look forward to being and doing.
One way you might approach it, and this may or may not work for you, but dividing your year up into drafting and painting, right?
Yeah.
And so that way, getting your ideas and getting those ideas, and then taking the time when you're doing teaching
Yeah.
to then just work on the compositions, making sure those are, as Rockwell would say, he wouldn't even think about color or texture
Yeah.
until his drawing and his design was perfect, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so it might be something that, hey, I paint in the summer,
Yeah.
but I'm during the winter I'm preparing all those paintings that I'm going to work on.
It's a good point. Keeping the mind and the vision active by
Yeah,
sketching, where I don't have to have this beautiful finished product, but just simply, yeah, just pick up the sketch pad and put the ideas down. Half an hour, I already have something there, and then go back to my routine.
yeah, yeah.
That's a good way of structuring it. Yeah.
Uh, so that's very cool, man. Very, very cool. So, what kind of advice or encouragement would you give a young artist who wants to be a great
Yeah. Work.
artist?
Do do a lot of work. I've seen people who don't produce much who want to be an artist. I'm saying you gotta produce a lot.
Hmm.
And only maybe some of it or a fragment of it will make it into new ideas and may even make it to being shown. But put in the sweat equity of hours and hours of work. Also, look to the masters, get your ideas from them, and always have mentors. I can't. I mean, I find that I have benefited greatly from teachers, mentors along the way, and I think that's going to be a lifelong process. Whether you'll even be able to be successful as an artist is a whole other question down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But just doing the groundwork of the hard work and designing,
Mm.
and uh, but I think I've seen at the Banana Factory a couple artists that I'm really inspired by. Especially, there's others as well who are just putting hours and hours in developing their craft, and it's the quiet. It sounds almost very lonely when you're doing all that work. So you do need to have people along the way who can give you feedback, friends who are artists as well, who
Yeah.
can, yeah.
Is that something the banana factory is good for? Just
Yeah.
having people around like that?
Yeah, you just have to seek them out, when they're there, develop the friendships, and say, could you stop by my studio sometime and take a look at what I'm doing? And that comes through, right? Just the fact that you're both there at the same time, and those are things that do come up, and I really treasure that.
That's cool.
Some wonderful people. I miss that right now because, of course, we can't be there at this time with the COVID lockdown. Yeah.
So you're getting some work. You're still working, just online, right?
Yeah, with the school. Yeah, exactly.
So even though you're home, you're still
Well, I'm still
working.
teaching. Oh, yeah, very
Yeah,
much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that's. Um, yeah, I asked my friend yesterday. I had a advisory meeting, and he's on my board, and it just seems like I don't know. It almost seems like every day he's producing another 5 foot by 5 foot. No, longer than that. Maybe 7 foot by 7 foot painting because he's a tall guy and they're bigger than he is. And I'm just like, how are you so productive, dude? And
Yeah.
he sent me this quote, which makes me think of what you just said. He says, "Don't think about making art. Just get it done.
Just
Let
do it.
everyone else decide if it's good or bad, whether they love it or hate it. While they are deciding, make even more art." And that was a quote by Andy Warhol.
Okay. Yeah. Well said.
And yeah. So work is your
Yeah,
advice.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just keep producing and keep growing it. Don't get stuck either in the old habits that may not be serving you well. And that's where again, getting critique, advice, insight from others, being in community of some sort will help.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course finding a good teacher.
Indeed. Beautiful. Well, let me ask you one last question.
Sure.
It's going to be the most important question. So brace yourself.
Sure.
What do you like to eat?
What do I like to eat? That's good. Oh man. I like going into Allentown, to Bethlehem, to some of the Latino restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
I like the food from the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, from Cuba, from Dominican Republic. Sancocho is comes in varied forms between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico.
The sancocho, that's that brown beef stew, right?
Stew, yeah. And when I was in the DR, I actually visited a family on a farm, and they killed a chicken right there that morning, and she cooked up the claws, every bit of piece. It was a skinny chicken, but it got cooked up. and I remember they had all kinds of tubers, different kinds, I think jautilla they call it, and different kinds of like starches mixed in, and a rich sauce. And I just loved it. I just remember we sat out on the thatched, roofed sort of covering and eating with the family and with some friends that I was traveling with, and feeling like really satisfied by that meal. Because it didn't have much meat at all, and the claws were sort of looking at you from inside the stew. But it varies, I guess, between how you make it as a person, and also between the two islands. But yeah, it's a great stew of a mixture of everything. And I remember she boiled it on this open fire with the wood burning. It was so that's a meal I remember very well. But I love food from Mexico, from Peru. When I was in Peru, I was impressed with their cuisine there. And Latin fare. And when I say Latin, of course, that covers so many varieties. I think the word Latin for some might be reductionist, but it really anything from Central South America, the Caribbean, I really enjoy. Yeah.
I remember going to my aunt's house once, and she made some of that. What did you call it again?
Sancocho or
sancocho. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh God, no, that looks so nasty.
Yeah.
But I, wanted to be polite, and so I'm like, oh my God, this is delicious. Give me another bowl.
Yeah.
It was so delicious, but it did not look like it was going to be. And
yep, exactly. Yeah. If you want pretty presentation, you have to go elsewhere maybe for that. But boy, when you eat it, that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh man, you make it. I'll tell you a funny story. The banana factory is in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
And they were having a gallery night. I don't know if it's on a Monday or a Friday or a Thursday or whatever. What day is it over there? The first Thursday or
first Friday? Oh yeah, first Friday. Yeah, that's open house.
First Friday. So I went there and I parked on the street, and as soon as I opened up the door, I was like, ooh, I've been here before.
Yeah.
Right? And I was maybe like in my 30s at this time. And I had no idea where I was. And I'm like, why do I know I've been here before? And it was like this weird deja vu kind of moment.
And
And then I look up and I look over to the right and I see this sign called the Puerto Rican Social Club, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right, close by. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then I'm like, oh my God. I remember when I was living in this foster home in Easton, I would go out sometimes with the father, and he was Puerto Rican, and we would drive somewhere. He'd take me to some flea market, buy me some little, weird toy or whatever. And I remember playing with this toy and us going to this social club and going to the door, and he had a special card that he had to put in, and they opened up the little sliding thing, and we went inside, um and it was, a social club for Puerto Ricans. And and I was maybe 5, 6 years old at the time.
Mhm.
And so here, almost 25 plus years later, I'm standing in the street and I'm getting hit by this incredible feeling. And
Yeah.
and it was right down the street from all those galleries and things. And
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, so now are there Puerto Rican restaurants around there, or would you have to go there to eat, or what?
I know there's a couple that I've come across, and then in Alton there's a new one that's I think Dominican
Mm,
on the east side that I just love. It's really I thought elegant the way they prepared everything.
nice.
And then there's also Machu Picchu. There's a Peruvian on the south side. So
Machu
yeah, there's
Picchu,
just
yeah.
yeah, this is just this really this cool variety, and I just hope the restaurants make it through this. I know there's a new Costa Rican one that just popped up in Broad Street, but with the closure, I just hope I just feel that these restaurants and restaurants in general just provide a cultural life
Yeah.
that give us a greater appreciation for the world and for who we are as a community. And if these restaurants would close, we've lost that cultural legacy, and I hope we can revive them in whatever way.
Well, if you would do me a favor, it's going
Uh-huh.
to sound strange. Get me their phone numbers.
Sure.
Okay. There was an Indian restaurant down here that I just absolutely adore and love. And every time I go in there, I look at the food and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get the worst case of diarrhea. And I'm going to not feel good when I eat this food,
Yeah.
right? Because that's the way it looks to
Yeah.
me. But oh my God, it tastes so incredible. And never once have I ever left there ever feeling ill, sick,
Yep.
or
Of
anything.
course. Of course.
And I always feel perfectly full, right? Like never too
Yeah.
full, not under full. Like it is just time and time and time and time again, just all the time, the same consistent, incredible experience.
Yeah.
And so during this COVID, I was like craving it, right? I was
Yeah.
having this
Yeah.
withdrawal.
Uh-huh.
And so I called the owner up, and and I said, Reed, we have to get you back open.
Yeah.
And so I encouraged her to open up, and then she's doing the Uber thing. But uh, I built a website for her so that we could do order the food online.
Yeah.
And so I want to reach out to a couple other restaurants and share that technology with them,
Yeah.
because if we don't do anything, they'll just go out of business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Gotta support man. Yeah.
yeah, but people still want the food, and the truth is, even though we're locked at home, we don't want to cook every day. So
Yeah. Right. Right. Get carry out. I know.
and
I
so
should really start doing that now. I should really get going, and because I think we wonder, well, is it safe with COVID to eat? But if the food's cooked, it's fine. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. It should be fine. And so, well, I think now's the time to start realizing, with the extended lockdown, we start thinking about how do we support our neighbors. Yeah.
yeah. And if you need to while you're eating it, if you just take a little Lysol and spray it on top of the food, it'll
And that I won't do.
oh.
Yeah. Oh, it's surreal. I know. I know. Who would have thought that we'd be saying this today? Oh my God.
Well, well, I went back and listened to the thing because I was like, okay, everybody's complaining, so I have to go listen to this for myself. And I actually thought what he said, because he was talking to the doctor. I'm like, hey, he's just asking a question, and it's kind of an interesting thought. If there's something out there that you can kind of wash the inside of yourself with,
Uh-huh.
I don't know if there is, or scientists have to invent it, but it made me think of my Puerto Rican friend. When he cooks eggs,
Yeah.
he uses just a little bit of bleach in the water
Oh wow. Okay.
to make sure that he doesn't poison himself or his family with salmonella or anything like that, or if, like, because um, let's say you make the eggs and it's sitting there in a pot and you go eat,
Yeah.
and then he comes back and does all the dishes. He only does that with eggs,
Yeah.
and I just always thought that was very interesting. And so when COVID actually started happening, one of the first things I bought was just a little thing of bleach, um, just to add just a drop or so to my dishwater, just
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
give it that little extra clean.
That's right. A little extra boost. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know, I mean, I'm not worried I'm poisoning myself or anything like that. I mean, obviously, you can't be stupid and put a whole
Uh-huh.
gallon in there, but um, until I'm like, yeah, it is an interesting, um, thought, but I see the humor. Like, this guy just posted this picture on Facebook with like an upside down Lysol and some other cleaner, and he made it look like an IV going into an arm, and
Yeah.
it's just hilarious. It's
Yeah.
like that's good.
It's
That's pretty
satire.
brilliant.
But
That's
so quick
good.
too. I mean, the use of memes within hours of
Yes.
yeah. I mean, so quickly people come up with these inventive memes. It becomes really the political discourse of the day. It's these images that we reduce
Indeed.
even discussion to just an image or two. Yeah.
That's what I think probably the greatest thing that came out of, well, not the greatest, but one of, I think if you're in relationship with another person, be it a spouse, a brother, a family member, family, and you're actually getting along
Yeah.
80 plus percent of the time, I think that's probably the number one best thing that's come out is people coming closer to each other. Now, with
Yeah.
that said, obviously there are people who are beating each other and raping each other and
Uh,
killing each other
yeah.
and divorcing each other and all that other stuff, right? But the truth is in those places, those problems already existed. Now they're just
Yeah.
amplified.
Magnified. Yeah. What
Yeah.
was already there.
And so if you have this closeness and you know how to communicate and you cooperate and you have a healthy relationship,
Yeah.
that amplifies, right?
Yeah.
And so you respect each other and each other's space. But
And you're
with
not,
uh-huh.
and you're also not economically stressed because you're worrying about now employment. Yeah. That's I imagine that weighs on some people really
Oh my
hard.
gosh, yes, absolutely. I mean, the number one reason for divorce is finances.
Yeah.
So, and now you're forcing people into a place where they can't work, or make
Oh
money, or it's like,
gosh, so hard for
you
some
know,
folks. Yeah. Yeah, I think about here at my house. The Joey, we're able to work right now, so we don't have that economic threat. And so I remember how when I see a lot of people showing pictures of domestic bliss, I remember, okay, but I'm seeing this through my own lens of privilege.
hmm
That if I didn't have a job, I'd be might be a very different experience being here at home. And so yeah.
yeah,
But you're right. It's been great that the family Zoom that we've been doing. I've been Zooming family. We never did that before, and so here I am with
yep,
relatives from Canada
yep.
talking now, and it's great.
It's funny because my whole entire life, Saturday nights were mom and dad date night, right? My
Yeah,
entire life, they still do it. Well, not right now. Now it's changed into family night, right? And
yeah,
so Friday nights at 8 o'clock, we all go on the Zoom call and we're all there, and it's like, this is kind of cool, and
yeah,
now outside of that, I think the greatest thing that COVID has done is brought us back to an appreciation for creativity and art.
yeah.
And the amount of creativity that's coming out, especially like through humor, like these
Yeah.
memes and stuff, is just,
Uh-huh.
it's so incredible.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man.
yeah.
Well, Dave, I see the time. We went a little over. So I wanted to thank you uh, for this conversation and your work. I also want to thank you personally for carrying on the heritage of the geometry.
Okay. Well, thank you, Victor. Yeah, much appreciated.
And yeah, and I think in history, as people become more aware of the importance of geometry and that it actually exists,
Uh-huh.
your work will serve as an incredible reference point and reminder um, in that history.
Yeah.
And so,
Keep the legacy alive. Yeah.
Indeed. Indeed. So how can people get in contact with you as an artist?
Oh, they can. I have a website, davidsommersart.com. That's SOMMERS. It's all one word, davidsommersart.com. They can check that out. I have my contact information there as well. And I have I've classified my art into different themes on my
Mhm.
website. So yeah, I would love to hear from you. If you can contact me, my website gives my email is dsummers60 at AOL.com.
60. I'm
Yeah.
assuming you were born in
Yeah, that's
1960.
exactly my birth year. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Very, very cool. Very cool. All right, Dave. Well, thank you, man.
Victor, thank you very much. I really wish you well. And good. We'll talk again soon.